For the purpose of this story, I'll refer to myself as Nolan. This started the way most gym friendships start. You see the same guy a lot, nod at each other, and eventually start saying what's up when you pass by. I went to the gym almost every day after work. Same time, same routine. It was the most predictable part of my day. One of the regulars was a guy named Josh. He always wore fitted gym shirts, carried a shaker bottle, and had a big duffel bag with him. He looked like someone who wanted to be seen as a serious lifter. At first, we just nodded at each other when we passed by. Eventually, he started saying hello. One day, he asked if I could spot him while he was bench pressing. I agreed. He pushed out a few reps and struggled on the last one, so I helped guide the bar back to the rack. After that, he started talking. He asked how long I'd been lifting, what my workout split was, and where I was from. I kept things general and didn't share too much. Before I went back to my set, he asked if I had Instagram and held out his phone. I followed him back. It didn't seem like a big deal. Over the next couple weeks, he would come up to me whenever we were at the gym at the same time. He'd ask what I was training and sometimes give advice like he was coaching me. He also started sending me gym memes through Instagram. I'd usually just react with a laughing emoji. Then one day, he messaged me saying there was a local festival happening that weekend and asked if I wanted to go. It sounded like something to do, so I said sure. When I met him there, the first thing I noticed was how different he seemed outside the gym. At the gym, he seemed controlled, but here he was loud and overly energetic. He greeted me like we were longtime friends and started doing strange voices while talking. High-pitched cartoon voices, then suddenly deep, dramatic ones. At first, it caught me off guard and I laughed, but he kept doing it constantly. After we got drinks, it got worse. His jokes became more inappropriate, and he would point at random people and say things that were uncomfortable, especially with families nearby. A few times I told him to calm down, but he just laughed and switched to another creepy voice, whispering my name. Nolan. He did it repeatedly, stretching out my name like it was part of the joke. We stayed for a couple hours, but the whole time I felt awkward around him. Still, I convinced myself he was just socially awkward. After that, he started messaging me more often. At first it was memes, but then it turned into constant messages asking what I was doing or if I wanted to hang out. One weekend he asked if I wanted to go to a bar. He said he had invited 2 girls to meet us there. That made it seem more normal, so I agreed. When we got there, he already seemed buzzed. We ordered drinks and waited, but the girls never showed up. After 20 minutes, I asked about them, and he casually said they had bailed. It felt like he had made the whole thing up just to get me there. Then the voices started again, worse than before. He made fake laughing and crying sounds and switched into deep villain voices while talking. People around us started glancing over. Every time I tried to have a normal conversation, he interrupted with another voice, and he kept repeating my name. Nolan. Listen. Nolan. It felt like everything had to revolve around me being there with him. He kept ordering drinks and tried to pressure me into taking shots. When I refused, he joked that I was boring. At that point, I decided to leave. I told him I had to go help my brother with something. He stared at me like he didn't believe it and seemed annoyed. I repeated that I had to go and stood up. He muttered something under his breath and laughed in that same fake voice. I left and felt instant relief. After that night, I decided I wasn't hanging out with him again. The next time I saw him at the gym, he acted like nothing had happened. He came up and started talking like usual and even suggested going out again. I kept my responses short, but he followed me around the gym while I worked out. It felt like he had decided I was his friend and wasn't letting go. Eventually, I started changing the time I went to the gym to avoid him. But then the messages started getting worse. If I didn't respond, he'd send another message asking if I was okay. Eventually, I stopped opening Instagram messages completely. One night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep. It was hot, so I had my window slightly open. My bedroom is on the first floor facing the backyard. Suddenly, I heard a voice outside. It was low and drawn out, like someone trying to sound creepy. It said my name, Nolan. It sounded like it was right under my window. I sat up and listened. After a few seconds, everything was quiet. I walked over and looked through the blinds but couldn't see anyone. Without thinking, I whispered through the window asking if it was Josh. There was no answer. I grabbed my phone and messaged him asking if he was outside my house. A few minutes later, the message showed seen. Then he replied with one word. No. That was it. The next night, it happened again. This time, the voice came from farther back in the yard near the fence. Nolan. I rushed to the window but didn't see anyone. That's when I messaged him again and told him if he didn't leave and ever came back, I would call the police and get a restraining order. I called him a freak and blocked him. Later that night, I looked through the blinds again and saw a shadow standing very close to the window. Just a dark silhouette. I yelled for him to get out and never come back. The figure stepped away and disappeared into the darkness. After that, I stopped going to that gym completely. I signed up at another gym across town and kept my routine private. 3 weeks passed without anything happening. Then one morning, I walked outside and saw my rear tire was flat. When I crouched down, I saw a clean slice in the sidewall. Someone had slashed it. I didn't confront Josh. Instead, I bought cameras and installed them around my house. The worst part was realizing someone I met in such a normal place had become obsessed with me. And once someone like that decides you're their friend, it's not easy to remove them from your life. My name is Lewis. I'm 22 years old and I live in a small town in Kansas. I've lived here for about 14 years and it's usually a quiet place. I work at a Mexican restaurant and have been there for about 4 years. I also go to the gym every day with my friend Colton. He's 19 and a typical country guy, but he's a good friend. This happened last summer. Colton had been dating a high school cheerleader named Addie. She was 17. They met on a dating app and dated for about 4 months. Their relationship was toxic from the start. They argued constantly, and she didn't like him spending time with anyone else. Eventually, Colton found out she had been cheating on him with several guys. That ended the relationship. She didn't handle the breakup well. One Tuesday night, Colton and I were at the gym around 7 p.m. We had just started our workout when a girl wearing a red hoodie and blue leggings walked in. Something about her felt off. She stood near the entrance staring directly at us before walking toward the women's locker room. A few minutes later, we heard crying coming from inside. It wasn't normal crying. It sounded unstable, like someone whispering to themselves while crying. About 10 minutes later, she came out wearing the same clothes. She didn't start working out. Instead, she slowly wandered around the gym and kept getting closer to wherever we were. Eventually, she disappeared and we didn't see her leave. We finished our workout around 8:40 and went outside to talk. There was a car sitting in the parking lot with its headlights on, which felt strange, but we ignored it. Later that night, Colton texted me asking if I thought that girl might have been Addie. That thought made my stomach drop. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard knocking on my brother's window, then knocking on my window, then aggressive banging on the front door. The doorknob started shaking like someone was trying to force it open. Then I heard a girl laughing. Not normal laughter. Hysterical laughter. My phone buzzed with a message from a random number telling me to leave Colton alone and saying I convinced him to break up with her. Another message followed. It was a picture of a knife in her hand. That's when I knew it was Addie. I texted my dad, who was still awake. He called the police immediately. When the officers arrived, they found her sitting in the grass near my house like she had been waiting. They arrested her on the spot. She admitted everything. The police asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. The only thing I still don't understand is how she got my address. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges. And without even thinking about it, I said yes. At that point, I was still shaking from adrenaline and fear. Knowing that someone had been outside my house with a knife, laughing and trying to force their way inside, was something I couldn't just brush off. The police walked over to where she was sitting in the grass. She didn't resist when they approached her. She just sat there, staring at the house like she was waiting for something else to happen. When they told her to stand up and turn around, she did it slowly, almost calmly. What made it even more unsettling was that she was smiling. Not a nervous smile, not embarrassed or scared. It was the same kind of strange smile someone would have if they thought they had done something clever. They handcuffed her and walked her to the patrol car. As they opened the back door, she turned her head slightly and looked straight toward the front of the house where I was standing behind the curtain. Even from that distance, it felt like she knew exactly where I was. Then they put her in the car and drove away. After the police left, the house felt incredibly quiet. My dad stayed up with me for a while in the living room because neither of us felt comfortable going back to sleep right away. We kept replaying everything that had just happened, trying to make sense of it. A police officer came back briefly to take a more detailed statement from me. I showed him the messages she had sent from the random number and the photo of the knife. He took pictures of my phone screen and said they would add it to the report. He told me they had found the knife in her possession when they searched her. Hearing that made my stomach drop all over again. If my dad hadn't, I checked my watch again, 3.1 miles. The strange thing was that I was standing still, but the number on the watch was still slowly increasing. That made it obvious. My GPS wasn't working properly. Now I only had two options. Either I could keep running forward and hope that I would eventually find the end of the trail, or I could turn around and run back the same way I came. The second option seemed like the smarter choice. If I ran back, I would eventually reach the place where the trail started. From there, getting home would be easy. So I turned around and started running back. But now the fog had become even thicker than before. I couldn't understand how that was possible. I ran slowly so I wouldn't accidentally wander off the trail. After running about a mile, so roughly 4 miles total by now, I heard a sound. The woods are usually completely silent, probably because the area is so small that not many animals live there. But the sound I heard, it wasn't like anything I had ever heard before. It's hard to describe in words. If I had to compare it to something, I would say it sounded like a groan. But it wasn't a normal groan. The sound was deep, long, and rising and falling in a strange way, like a siren going off quietly. The sound would slowly rise, then drop, then rise again. But there was something about it that felt completely wrong. It didn't sound like a person calling for help. It didn't sound like pain either, just a long, strange, vibrating sound. I immediately started running faster. But remember, I had already run 4 miles. My body didn't have enough energy left to run very fast. The faster I ran, the quicker I got tired. And the more tired I got, the more afraid I became. The scariest part was that the sound wasn't stopping. It felt like whatever it was moving at the same pace as me. I looked back several times, but every time, I saw nothing but fog. Nothing. I kept running. It felt like a very long time had passed. My lungs were burning. My legs were giving out. And then, suddenly the trees ended. I had come out of the woods and onto the road. I almost collapsed right there. I was breathing so hard that I felt like I might throw up. A few seconds later, I looked back toward the woods. And that's when I saw it. Right in the middle of the trail, a short distance away. Something was standing there. I can't call it a person, because it was something else entirely. Through the fog, I could only see a dark shape. It was much taller than me. I'm 6'1", but that figure looked at least 7 feet tall. It was slowly swaying, like it was gently moving in the air. If it hadn't been moving, I might have thought it was a tree, but I could feel that it was looking at me. The sound had stopped now. I didn't want to stay there for even 1 more second. I immediately turned and ran toward home with everything I had left. This happened about 6 years ago. It was the last week of September. My friend Edwin and I had been planning to go kayaking in Willapa Bay for almost 2 years. If you're not familiar with that place, I should mention, it's a massive tidal bay on the Washington coast, about 25 miles long. Most of the area is oyster farms and wildlife reserves. On a clear day, the place looks incredibly peaceful and beautiful. But the weekend we went, the weather was anything but clear. When we arrived in the morning, the entire area was covered in thick fog. But both of us were experienced. We had been kayaking since we were kids. Edwin had even worked as a kayaking guide for several summers during college. We weren't beginners. Early that morning, we launched our kayaks into the water near Nakota. The fog was very thick, but we figured the sun would burn it off in a few hours. We had a GPS, a compass, and all the other essential gear. Our plan was simple. Paddle toward Long Island Watch. Some birds sit on a sandy island and eat lunch and return before the afternoon. The first hour was completely normal. Because of the fog, there was a strange silence everywhere. It felt like we weren't floating on water, but drifting through soft mist. We could barely see about 40 feet ahead. But we stayed close to each other. We were also checking our direction every few minutes. Everything was going fine. Around 9 a.m., I heard a sound for the first time. A splash in the water. At first, I thought Edwin had moved his paddle. He was about 15 feet to my left. But when I looked at him, his paddle was resting on top of his kayak. and he was looking at me too. He asked, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We both stopped paddling and just listened for a few seconds. Then the sound came again. This time we clearly understood. It wasn't the sound of a paddle. It was the sound of oars. And oars are usually used on small boats, not kayaks. The sound seemed to be coming from about 100 feet away on the right. Edwin said, "Probably a fisherman." That was possible. Sometimes people with small boats come out there to check their crab pots. The fog was so thick that we couldn't see them, but sounds travel in strange ways over water. Sometimes they seem close, sometimes far away. We thought the boat would pass by us in a minute or two. And that's when things started getting really strange. We both floated silently in the water for a while. The fog was so thick that all we could see around us was mist everywhere. Then the sound came again. Splash. The sound of a paddle entering the water. Then another. Splash. Now there was no doubt that a boat was coming toward us. But there was something strange. We couldn't see it. If it really were only 100 feet away, we should at least have been able to see its silhouette. But in the fog, we couldn't see anything at all. Edwin said quietly, "Do you feel like that sound is getting closer too?" I listened carefully. He was right. The sound was slowly coming closer. But then suddenly, the sound stopped. The entire place became completely silent again. Such a deep silence that we could hear only the sound of our own breathing. We both sat there for a few seconds. Then Edwin joked, "Maybe it changed direction and went somewhere else." I nodded. But then, we heard the sound of water moving right behind us, so close that my heart started pounding. Both of us immediately turned to look behind. But there was only fog. Nothing was visible. Then, splash. This time the sound was so close that it felt like something was only a few feet away from our kayak. Edwin immediately lifted his paddle. "This isn't right," he said in a low voice. I grabbed my paddle too. Now it was clear to us that something was moving around us, but we couldn't see it. Then suddenly, inside the fog, a faint shadow appeared, like a long, narrow boat. It was slowly emerging from the mist. Both of us went completely silent. The boat looked very old, wooden. But the strangest thing was, no one was visible in it, and yet the paddles were moving in the water. We saw it clearly. The paddles lifted, went into the water, and then came back up again. But there was no one rowing them. My throat went dry. Edwin whispered, "You're seeing this too, right?" I replied quietly, "Yes." The boat stayed near us for a few seconds. Then it slowly passed in front of us. The fog shifted slightly, and for a moment we were able to look inside the boat. And in that moment, a chill ran down my spine. Inside the boat, there were wet marks, as if someone had just been sitting there. But there was no one there. Then the boat slowly disappeared back into the fog. For a few seconds, we both stayed frozen in place. Then Edwin said, "We're going back." I didn't argue for even a second. We immediately changed direction and started paddling back. Neither of us had the courage to look behind. About half an hour later, we finally reached the shore. As soon as we pulled the kayak out, the fog suddenly began to thin. Within a few minutes, the visibility returned, as if nothing had happened. Later, after that day, we talked about that incident many times. We tried to think of every logical explanation. Maybe it was a fisherman. Maybe we imagined it. Maybe the fog and the sounds had tricked us. But one thing has never made sense. If it really was a boat, then who was rowing it? And if there was no one in it, how was it moving through the water? Even today, whenever I think about the ocean or thick fog, I remember that same sound. Splash, splash, and that empty boat. That came out of the mist and then disappeared without leaving a single trace.